Boker Tov Chavrim. I'm saying Boker Tov because over here in the eastern part of the world, it is good morning, but it's not a good morning in Syria. This is the sound that many have woken up to around 3 a.m. this morning as the U.S.-led coalition began to drop bombs on Syria, including in Damascus. Now, the U.S. military is saying that some of these bombs are being dropped of course, inside or on alleged chemical weapons factory, as well as a storage facility in Damascus, according to the military respondents there out of the United States on on this attack there. Warplanes were involved, as well as cruise missiles were involved. Russia is saying right now that they did not have any of the attacks coming inside their perimeters that they had set up. Although the Syrian government, as you can see on the image behind me here, their air defense missile systems were engaged. They say that they actually shot down a number of cruise missiles, trying to stop the onslaught of all the missiles coming towards Damascus. And but again, as I stated here, though, RT is reporting here that none of the U.S. allied missiles entered Russian anti-air defense zones, says the defense ministry. So Russia did have set zones where, if in the event these missiles were targeted inside of their areas there, they would have taken them out. Now, I'm waiting to see if the U.S., will they actually escalate more? Will they do another strike yet again tonight? As we reported to you guys originally from Vanessa Beeley that had shared this information with us, that Russia would watch for 2 days. If the battle went on more than 2 days, they could expect that this could spiral out of control. But Iran is already weighing in on this, saying that there is going to be a price to pay. So this doesn't mean that this is just going away easily. And there's a lot of other comments that are coming out already that are very disturbing about how this could go. But yet at the same time, it does seem, as far as tonight, that it has been a very limited strike compared to what the threats were from President Trump to start with. I do want to play, though, for you guys. Gosh, I'm sorry. This is one other issue I did want to bring up before I play this other video here. And I actually saw this yesterday, and we gosh, it's only been a few hours since we've been on with you guys. We were up to 2 a.m. Finally had to go to sleep for a little bit, and then 3 a.m. our time is when the attack began, or maybe it was at 4 a.m. our time. The attack began, and of course, we were already asleep by that time there. Israeli News Live is not a 24-hour news service. But anyway, the attack began, but we mentioned, and I don't remember if it was Nikki Haley or if it was Heather Nauert for the State Department, but we'd already discussed how the U.S. was talking about they were going to gather their evidence from the chemical inspectors in Damascus. And sure enough, the Trump administration didn't even wait for that evidence, did they? They just began to launch strikes anyway. Well, James Mattis was also saying the same thing. U.S. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis has told Congress he believed there was a chemical attack in Syria and that America wanted inspectors on the ground to collect evidence and prevent an out-of-control escalation. Well, we had just shared that with you guys last night here live, I guess around 10 or 11 p.m. Our time here. And unfortunately, the evidence is not, I don't know if it's even going to be gathered at this point, because inspectors may not try to go to the scene with suddenly the attack coming out of nowhere, and really kind of caught me off guard. I really felt like if they were wanting to gather this evidence, they'd want to get the evidence to even supposedly, quote unquote, justify their war, right? I forgot to turn the lights on in here, by the way. Sorry about that. But it's just disturbing. Now, this here is a former Pentagon official that RT had interviewed. I'm not exactly sure when they interviewed him, maybe yesterday, April 13th, but I wanted you to hear some of the thoughts that he says on this, because this is troubling. A Pentagon official on what he says about this particular chemical attack in Syria. Listen into this. Let me turn it up. I got volume down too low here. Former Pentagon official. What does he have to say?
Official Michael Maloof, thank you so much for joining us today, Michael. Now, Russia's Ministry of Defense says the Syrian chemical attack was staged by Britain. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think you have to look to motive, and I think that this is it certainly wasn't with the Syrian government, because they had just worked out an arrangement with the Jaish al-Islam, which, by the way, has a capability of chlorine gas attacks, and they've even said so in previous statements. They performed this act in Aleppo recently, so they were negotiating to remove Jaish al-Islam, some of the remaining fighters, out of East Ghouta, and so there was no motive on the part of the Syrians to do this, and certainly wasn't the Russians. So I think you have to look at motive, and I know the foreign ministry said Great Britain, but I think you have to look closer in the neighborhood.
All right, I want to get to, on Thursday, there were unnamed U.S. officials who spoke to NBC News. They said they had obtained blood and urine samples from some of the victims, which tested positive for chlorine and a nerve agent. Now, U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley says we definitely have enough proof, but now we just have to be thoughtful in our action. So, Michael, if this is proof, how do you think the UN will respond to this chemical attack?
Well, proof of what? That there was a chemical attack? That's one thing, but are they going to be able to determine who actually instigated it? That's yet another question, and that is not what they've determined just yet with any proof. And I think that's why you're seeing Secretary of Defense Mattis urging caution, because they don't have the intelligence. The intelligence is not there, and I think that this is why you're seeing some hesitation on the part of the U.S. in going full bore to launch attacks.
And right now, as you said, there hasn't been any evidence brought forth to show who is actually responsible for this attack.
Correct.
But we do have the U.S. President Trump. He's blaming the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, and he's saying that he is a gas-killing animal. Now, for a couple of days now, the U.S. military has been moving more military gear to the offshores of Syria. But how soon do you think Trump will move on his threat of attack?
I guess we can stop it there, because we already know how soon he has moved on it. Surprising to all of us, no doubt. But it was very much troubling to see a former Pentagon official actually stating that the very group that is part of the White Helmets had chlorine gas and had motive to actually carry these strikes out there. We're going to be following this throughout the day here, trying to see what's going on. Just keep you guys up to date on what we're finding out. The details are still sketchy this morning, and also to determine whether or not this was the only limited attack that was going to be done by the coalition. If they have taken the escalation, the possible escalation of this turning into a global war seriously, or, was this something just for Trump to be able to save face because he'd already said he's going to do it, and so now they've actually launched this attack, and then now they'll stop and say, okay, we did what we said we were going to do. Not really sure as of yet there. We'll have to wait to see how that works out. Also, to get more information off the ground in Syria, we'll be reaching out to our friends in Syria today to see what they are saying about this attack. And of course, I do know too, by the way, that there was a residential area that was struck in Syria. Early reports are saying right now that 2 people were killed, and in that because the attack was in a densely populated area. That could be where the alleged chemical weapons facility was located, that was targeted there. But they are saying that there were fatalities in that region there. You can see this video here showing some of the bombs going off right there. Oh, goodness, that's a big enough explosion there. Anyway, blessings to all of you guys. Still early in the morning here. We'll see how things go out, and I'll tell you what we'll do here. Unless for some reason missiles start falling again during the daytime, which I don't anticipate as of right now. Otherwise, we will come back on 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Prague time, and of course 7 p.m. Syria and Damascus time, 7 p.m. Excuse me, watching Israeli News Live. Shalom, shalom. In a world of ain shalom, there is no peace.